Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of the Healthcare Innovation Podcast. Today, I have a special guest, Dr. Akram Bouchenaki, with us for this episode. I've known Akram for a long time now, and I have to say, while I know so many people in the healthcare space globally, Akram is one of the most global individuals when it comes to healthcare. He has worked across so many different countries, brings in such a diverse range of experience. And right now is doing something very interesting in terms of innovation at scale. So without further ado, Akram, welcome to this episode. Would love to maybe start with your introduction and your background for our viewers, and then we'll go into some of the questions we had.
Thank you so much, Purav. It's a pleasure to be with you today, and it's a pleasure to be part of this great program you're putting together. So, quick background about myself before we discuss important topics in the field of healthcare. I guess in short, my background, I think, as you said, has always been in international business. From the get-go, my training is in pharmacy. I'm a doctor in pharmacy by training. I was trained in France at Paris University of Pharmacy, and then very early on started to be attracted to international aspects of healthcare. So I did part of my training in Spain, in Valencia, and then in the United States, in Houston, Texas, at MD Anderson Cancer Center. And then joined the industry very early on. And and I've been in this field for close to 30 years now.
Thanks, Akram, for that background. Akram, for our viewers, maybe it would be helpful to know a little bit more about your experience. What kind of international roles did you take? What geographies have you focused on? And I know it's a long list, but still an overview would be helpful.
I'll try to keep it concise, Purav. Yes, and so I think a couple of common themes. I would say I've been fortunate to join some great companies very early on. I joined Glaxo, which is today GSK. It was still called Glaxo at the time, to work on what was at the time the best-selling drug on the planet, Zantac, ranitidine, for the treatment of ulcer. So that gives you my age and how old I am in this business. I joined Bristol Myers Squibb after that, and worked in oncology. BMS was at the time one of the leading companies in the oncology space, with a great innovation like Taxol that really transformed the treatment of many cancers. And so I think these are some I guess common themes where I've been fortunate enough to work on really transformative medications. For instance, the treatment of ulcer was transformed by the discovery of Helicobacter pylori. So an infection that ends up causing ulcer disease, and therefore requiring treatment by antibiotics and anti-ulcer therapy. So and that really was a big transformation. Again, Taxol and the new modalities in chemotherapy were actually really impactful in the treatment of cancer. Then I joined a company which was small at the time, called Gilead Sciences, and had an incredible journey working and building the commercial organization and the commercial footprint globally for Gilead Sciences. I joined them first in the United States at the headquarters in San Francisco, and then moved to Europe, in France, then the UK, and then worked on all their international markets. So I think these are some of the themes, Purav, and obviously Gilead brought such a great amount of innovations that really transformed the care of many patients. So particularly treatment of HIV with the triple combination therapy combined into one pill once daily. That was a real transformation, where people moved from taking a handful, literally, a handful of pills and capsules every day into taking just one pill once a day, and that transformed the care of HIV patients. And later on, much later on, I've had the fortune to work on the hepatitis C treatment, another revolution, a cure, which is not very common, right, in infectious disease, where you have a treatment that actually cures an infection 100% almost. So quite interesting and impactful experiences.
Totally, I can relate. And Akram, nowadays, at least in our part of the world, most of our viewers will be able to relate with remdesivir because, unfortunately, in the COVID times, Gilead's remdesivir has been one of the key solutions to managing critical patients. And I truly appreciate the experience, right? Because what Gilead brought to the world was not just the scientific innovation, but also the innovation of access. But there is one thing to develop a cure for hepatitis C or treatment for HIV, but to make it available to 6 or 7 billion people across different geographies, and it's in itself an achievement.
Agreed. No, I completely agree, perhaps. So I think that was also, and again, I've had the great fortune of working with great mentors throughout my career. Starting, at Bristol Myers Squibb with someone like Benoit Gallet, or at Gilead with a great gentleman, James Saperstein. I was also lucky enough to work closely with John Martin, who sadly passed away this year, and Norbert Bischofberger, and the incredible senior management team at Gilead. I was still a young man at the time, but really was able to learn so much and kind of get the vision of both, working and developing great science, but at the same time thinking about how to make this science broadly available. And I think that Gilead came up with this model to allow for the voluntary licensing, allowing generic manufacturers to make the drug broadly available, mostly with many great Indian companies, actually.
Can you tell viewers a little bit more about voluntary licensing? I'm aware of the concept, but for many, it would be very novel. People might not even be realizing that the medicine they are taking is through voluntary licensing.
No, that's a really good point, actually. So what it all started from the realization that obviously all the treatments that were developed were available in the north, to summarize, and then most of the patients were actually in the south. And I'm particularly talking about the HIV epidemic. So at the time, there was a thinking of how to make products broadly available. And obviously one company was not able to do it on their own to treat, hundreds of millions of people. And so the team at Gilead came up with the idea of making their licenses available and doing technology transfers to manufacturers to allow for scaling up the manufacturing, reducing the costs, and then therefore allowing a very broad access. And so today there are luckily hundreds of millions of people that are able to take an HIV medicine every day at an affordable cost. Coupled to that, so there's been that's at a company level, but there has been obviously other more institutional initiatives, such as the medicines patent pool, which basically gathered all the innovator companies' patents, and Gilead was the first one actually to join this patent pool, and allowed for generic manufacturers again to manufacture high volume, lower costs. And then funding came through the Global Fund to allow to actually deploy all this medication.
Wow, no, that's quite an innovation. And it takes a lot of forward thinking to take such a step. So that's amazing. So Akram, this always brings up a question in my life. Like, they say in sports, right, that if you once you have won the World Cup, you're at the high of your career, and probably you retire. You should retire at such a high point. So, what was exciting enough for you to move on from there and take on your current role? Maybe if you can tell us a little bit about that,
Yeah.
really.
No, thanks, Purab. But in fact, I don't think, for me, certainly a retirement is not a good recipe. I think, again, there are so many things to do. And again, the more the time passes and I realize how much there is still to do. Again, if you look at what's happening right now around us, Purav, with the COVID epidemic, right? So this has just put a huge flashlight on the absolute need to ensure equality of access to therapies. We cannot have a world where, some people get all the, great and expensive treatment, and then a majority of people have no access to treatment. Because at the end of the day, we're part of the same chain. And I think that's what COVID actually made people realize, right? Other epidemics were not as acute or not felt as acutely globally, right? So they were very regional, and so there was huge awareness in certain parts of the world. But obviously, COVID-19 has shown, the importance of securing proper access to drugs, proper access to innovation, etc. So that's actually how. That was one of the thinking that led me to join another great initiative, much more entrepreneurial actually, and building a business to precisely bring innovation to emerging markets. And so that was an enterprise we started with another great mentor and friend, Simba Gill, who with seed money from Texas Pacific Group, and we started this company that took us to Latin America, and we built a business in Brazil and then in Mexico, with the idea to precisely have a platform to welcome innovations and accelerate access to care. So there is a common theme, and as you know, this is still part of what I'm working on right now at ALJ Health.
Yeah, so Akram, tell us a little bit more about ALJ. What's the vision? How did a group like ALJ decide to get into healthcare? What's your vision around building this business?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, I think like many things, it all starts with an encounter. And so for me, it started with the meeting of Mr. Mohammed Jameel. And I was very impressed with the visionary aspect and, kind of the enthusiasm he has in building true access to care. So there is the Jameel family has a history in philanthropy, very successful one, through the philanthropy called Community Jameel, and Community Jameel has, for instance, as one of the highlights has been the support they've given to the Jameel Poverty Action Lab at MIT, led by Abhijit Banerjee and Esther Duflo, who have been recipients of the Nobel Prize in Economics in 2019, as you well know. So obviously there is this vision that has been there for many years, coupled with an incredibly successful business journey that started in 1945. That the Jameel family started in 1945. And so the idea here is to build a state-of-the-art healthcare platform to precisely accelerate access to innovation for the global South, and ensuring that, when a technology, when an innovation, when a drug is available in the US, in Europe, in Japan, in China, in other parts of the world, it benefits a broader community of people. So that's really the vision. I thought that was very consistent with the way I had led my career, and it was just a great challenge and adventure. So we're really in the middle of building this with great partners. So right now we're at really collecting and building relationships and partnerships with great innovator companies, as I said, from right now mostly from the US and Japan. But the goal is really to have this broad platform up and running very soon.
That's a fantastic mission, Akram, to bring some of these innovation to Middle East, to Africa, to some of the Asia Pacific countries. At the same time, it's hard from my understanding, right? That these markets have its own set of challenges, its own set of financial, operational limitations, and yet all this technology can make a huge change to the lives of people. So, as you build this, right, maybe for our viewers, and many of them are aspiring innovators trying to build innovative businesses, solve access challenges. Can you talk about some of the typical challenges you observe and how do you typically overcome these?
No, that's a good point, Ravan. It's a broad question, and I think challenges come in many different ways and forms, right? And there are different ways to tackle them. I think so. There are different levels. When you think about an innovation in health, and I mentioned a few, right, that I've had the opportunity to work on and deploy and build across markets. So you have the innovation, but then you have to think about what is the recipient market, what's going to be the target audience for this innovation. And generally, what I have seen certainly throughout my career is that you have a huge diversity of contexts, right? Typically, you will have countries or territories or regions that will be much more open, and it always starts with a political will, right? So there needs to be a political will at country level or a regional level that wants to actually promote access to innovation. So companies can do a lot, but really, and again, we're seeing it here in the COVID crisis. Public-private partnership is a really important driver for accelerating access to innovation. A couple of examples. So you look at a country like Egypt, great country that has been plagued with a very high rate of hepatitis C infections. And so there has been a decision at the highest level to really tackle the problem and eliminate the disease. And Egypt is actually well on its way to be one of the first countries with high prevalence to eliminate a disease that has been plaguing the population for decades. Rwanda is another example. And interestingly, it starts with a desire at the highest level to do something good for its population. And so I think innovators need to think along those lines. And then the partnership part is a very important piece of the recipe.
Got it, Akram. Akram, what I also we hear in general context, right, is that technology now has been a great leveler. There were some of the things which were fundamentally not possible in the past when trying to sell a new service, create a new level of access. With technology, a lot of those limitations have gone away. I can listen to you sitting in India. I can speak to you. I do not need to travel, like just at a very simple level. But this has multiple ramifications at an individual patient level, at a community, at a country level, at a company level. How are you guys leveraging the benefits of these technologies to try and generate more and more access?
No, that's a key point, Purab, and I think it's actually a unique opportunity when you think of it, right? Because we are at exactly at this time where you can train people remotely, where you can provide education, and that's a big piece, right? That's one of the rate limiting steps, as I certainly have observed throughout my career, is, for instance, the lack of availability of trained resources to tackle certain diseases. And so leveraging technology definitely plays a huge role in that. The advent of digital health, telemedicine, teleconsultations are really, I think, going to make a huge difference. I don't think we are there yet, but given, as you say, the speed at which things evolve, I think within the next 5 to 7 years, we will see something quite impactful. Again, COVID, interestingly, has created a precedent, right? Where people are now consulting their physician over a screen, and that's becoming almost a common practice around the globe, which was absolutely impossible to imagine only a few years ago. So I think that's certainly one area. That's from the patient's point of view. I think from the other side is obviously the incredible development in or the genetic side of medicine. Now, as you see, PCR is now a very standard tool available in every corner of the planet. And I think that also will drive incredible changes in terms of new technologies, new ways of screening for disease, new ways of monitoring disease. And I think lots of opportunities are going to be open on that front.
Makes sense, Akram. So, Akram, I go to the next level of question then. So, with all these diverse experiences, if you were to advise some of our young listeners who are also aspiring to build careers within healthcare innovation, I heard two important lessons. One was around looking at the political way, looking at the desire of different nations, and then working in alignment with them, not going against them. Second is having strong partnerships. The third one is on the lines of digital. But again, these are kind of mega trends at an individual level when someone's trying to shape his or her career in this. What are some of the things that benefited you and you would like to pass on to our audience?
No, it's good. It's a good question. I think really, again, looking back at the last 30 years I spent in this industry, I think there are two big lessons, I suppose. One is the importance of joining great schools. So I think the training, the fundamental training is important, right? So focus on the education. Definitely, that's a prerequisite. But also, I think the learning on the job in great environments. It's interesting because there is a trend today for young people not to want to join big groups, etc., and want to start their own business early, etc., which is certainly an important and an interesting trend. However, I think that for many people benefiting from the experience, the learnings, the processes, and the understanding of large groups is actually important. So I wouldn't discount that for sure. And then also having the chance to learn from great leaders, as I said. So I've had the good fortune of meeting some great individuals throughout my career, and I think that's another important lesson. Obviously, I mean it's obvious, but it's good to know it walking into a professional career.
Makes sense, Akram. Makes sense. That's a great lesson to share. Akram, any other message that you would like to convey to our audience before we conclude this episode?
No, I think, look, the bottom line is, I think healthcare is now at the center of many agendas. We have seen the impact of a minuscule virus on so many industries, literally decimating, tourism and airlines and and so I think now there is acute awareness, if it wasn't before, that there is a strong need for strong healthcare systems, for support to research and development, for great supply chains. And so that's where I think what I'm doing now typically is inscribed into this chain. So I think the future is full of opportunities to really fix the world, if you want, and help people, because again, healthcare trends are, and you know this more than most, Purav, given your expertise, but as you can see, disease profiles tend to become similar across the globe, right? Non-communicable diseases are becoming the norm, as opposed to being reserved to a small portion of wealthy nations. And so all of this is really opening, I think, many fields of work for a young generation that is coming into this space.
Great, Akram. Thank you so much for taking the time. Really enjoyed the conversation with you.
Thank you so much, Purav. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.